On this.
Got it. All right. Well, I just wanted to welcome everybody to our July 2nd Global Transformation Project discussion series program. And all of you have met me and Siobhan and CJ, who started this monthly discussion series. This brought on some of the leading minds in science and consciousness science. Mind, body, and consciousness science. And today we're going to have a leader in progressive education theory. Dr. Bill Spadey has a book coming out soon on his outcome-based education theory. And this is I haven't had a chance to read the whole book, but I've had a chance to look at parts of it. And the parts that I've seen are profoundly exciting. And I can't wait to learn more about O.B.E. and explore these new possibilities for education, because we're just barely scratching the surface of what education could be. And it goes right to the heart of the Global Transformation Project, the global coalition advocating a United Nations resolution for mind-body education and public education worldwide, because it would save the world trillions of dollars in future saved health and social costs. So without further ado, I would like to introduce Dr. Spadey, and I can't wait to hear what you have to talk to us about. I'd like to open it up, if it's okay, Bill, with a question, and
Sure.
That would be if you could just briefly explain the essence of O.B.E. in your words and how you got into it.
Thank you. Well, hello, everyone. The essence of O.B.E. is very simple. It's 3 words. In fact, it's 2 words. It's outcome-based. And the most important of those words is the word based, which means defined by, focused on, aligned with, and organized around. At least that's how we've been using it for 5 decades. Well, if you're going to define by, focus on, organize around something, what is that something? And right now, that something in education is time. Everything in our modern education systems, doesn't matter which country we're talking about, it doesn't matter what aspect of the system or what level of the system, everything is defined by how long it is supposed to last. And what controls that time-based system, or what's totally connected to it, is something we call credentialing. That is, credits, credit hours, degree programs, and degrees, et cetera, themselves are all governed by time. So, curriculum, which we think is the substance of education, is in fact a series of time-based events. Okay, they last 9 months, or they last 3 months, or they last however long it is that someone calls a term, okay, or a semester, or a school year, or whatever it may be. Well, outcome-based education had 2 goals. One was to move out of time-based to be, I'm going to call it learning-based. And the other was to have learning-based not be a bell curve of results, but in fact, to be a skewed curve of results, skewed up to the high side. I got into it because one of my friends from my own local community out here in a place called Milwaukee, Oregon, which no one has heard of, he was a graduate student. I, in fact, introduced him to the world famous Benjamin Bloom just at the time that Bloom was creating an instructional model for classroom teachers that basically shifted these things we called the conditions of success. And he showed me the experimental work that he and Bloom had been doing with enormously effective results. I mean, absolutely reversing the ratio of high success to failure, et cetera, et cetera. It was just incredible. He showed it to me and said, I think we're going to take American education by storm. And I said, you're not going to take anything by storm. This will never work. He said, what do you mean this will never work? Well, the model that Bloom had created was called mastery learning. That model was based on two factors. One was that teachers were in control of what the learning standards were. And the learning standards, okay, were clearly defined, okay, standards that apply to all students. Okay, all students. It was not bell curve standards. It was not bell curve expectations. It's here's what students will be able to do. And the other factor, which was critical, which is why I said it will never work, is that he assumed that the teachers controlled time and opportunity. And therefore, built into the model was an expanded opportunity element, okay, where everything was not fixed time on schedule, but students who weren't doing well were given some additional supplementary time, et cetera, et cetera. And I said, this will never work for the reasons I've given you. I realize, because my background is, I'm a sociologist, okay? We study organizations and systems and how they work. And I said, this will never work because at the end of whatever it is, whether it's a term, whether it's a semester, whether it's a grading period, whether it's a school year, students get graded in ink. And ink is what ends opportunity to learn that particular thing better and improve on it. Ink is tied to the calendar. Ink is tied to credentialing. All of this keeps us trapped in this time-based box. Okay, time-based, single opportunity. You have to do it by the time you have to do whatever it is, okay, by the time, okay, the calendar runs out, okay, or the student doesn't pass or gets a low grade, et cetera, because they have not learned enough. So I jumped in, okay, I had other career plans as a sociologist. I was teaching at Harvard at the time, and I thought I was going to be going and doing these other kinds of things. And I found that this Bloom model was so compelling theoretically that it deserved to be brought to the system level, that it needed to address the system constraints, et cetera. So I jumped in, and I've been in for over 5 decades. Amen. It's that simple.
Now, can you describe, just concisely or generally, what form O.B.E. would take from where you took it off from Bloom?
Well, here's the dilemma. What I sent you to review for this program is in the final 2 chapters of my latest book, I think it's about the third slide down, CJ, if you want to show that. It's called Outcome-Based Education's Empowering Essence. And that is, there we go. That book was, nope, there we are. That book came out in 2020. It is about much of the latest thinking I've done. And what's in the final 2 chapters, in fact, the final 3 chapters of that book, is so far beyond the Bloom model and the conventional thinking about curriculum and learning and student accomplishment and student potential. It's just miles beyond that. Because we have evolved and evolved and evolved and evolved. And what evolved, Bill, is outcomes. Our thinking about and our understanding of what are the results we want. Because outcomes are, in effect, your purpose. It's what you want the learning system to be able to generate or produce or facilitate, okay? And if you change that picture of learning, if you expand it, if you elevate it, if you deepen it, all right, then you're going to have to base education on whatever that outcome framework is, whatever that conception of this is the kind of learner we want to send out the door to make the world a better place. And that is beyond, it is dimensions beyond cognitive learning of subject matter. So this book traces briefly, okay, it traces but systematically the 5 decades we had to go through of continuing to evolve this whole approach. So what much of the standard conventional work is all about in terms of outcome-based education, this work, my current work, where my colleagues and I have taken this work, okay, is miles beyond that. It's miles beyond test scores. It's miles beyond passing courses. It can include those things, but human beings, human potential, human empowerment, okay, is deeper, 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 richer than that. And that's where I want to go with the work. And that's why I connected so resonantly and harmoniously with you and your work.
Well, one of the concepts that when I was looking at your soon to be released book was you were speaking about there are no limits to how vast your awareness, consciousness, perception, and potentiality can become, or what they can reveal. And you say you literally experience a more expansive dimension of existence, a new zero in which you can discover and create a new universe of paradigm potentials and realities and embody a more expansive consciousness identity. And one thing that struck me, because where I've been immersed, I was a sociology major, by the way, just so you know, so I kind of see things in systems as well. And but what that struck in me was some of the science that I've, for the last decades, I've just been immersed in the mind-body consciousness science. And one of the studies that came out showed that people that practice mind-body meditation on a regular basis showed to be much more likely to actualize the lives they desired than people who didn't practice mind-body meditative practices. And that seemed to really segue with the point that you were making in the book, was that human consciousness has these untapped potentials.
Absolutely. The work I've been doing most recently Actually, it's in another of the diagrams that I've sent you, but I just want to talk about this. It was 30 years ago. It was, in fact, about 33 years ago that I put out a framework that was an extension of Bloom's work. And Bloom's work was all about, there it is, there we go. I call it the life performance wheel. There we go. All right. I took Bloom's framework. He was very famous for this thing called the taxonomy of cognitive objectives. Okay. Cognitive is what happens in your head. And I said, how do we know if anything's happening in your head until you do something? And I pushed and pushed and pushed my colleagues to deal deeper and deeper with this concept of, so what's an outcome? And what we realized and where we pushed it is an outcome is a demonstration of learning, and the demonstrations take different forms. Okay. And the more complex forms, the real life forms, are what we call, what I refer to here in this framework, performance roles. And those performance roles are something, if you look all around the wheel and the two things in the center, these are things we do all the time in our lives. So I put this out and I said, all of the Bloom cognitive technical work all could exist at the in the bottom half of this, below the dotted line. Okay, that is where people are learners and thinkers, and they are planners and designers and problem finders and problem solvers, etc. But the Bloom taxonomy kept people captured down in that cognitive domain, which I call one-dimensional learning. It's what happens in your head, okay? When you have to do something, that's two-dimensional learning. That means taking what's in your head and applying it in some kind of tangible form. Mm-hmm. Every time we apply something and do something, we do it somewhere. And somewhere is the context in which we want to be able to do it. Mm-hmm. All right? So these things called performance roles are really about three-dimensional learning. Well, what was absent is everything that you see at the top of the wheel. Everything that Daniel Goleman called interpersonal intelligence. I'll call it applied interpersonal intelligence, where people are relating to each other, communicating with each other, interacting with each other, etc., which means you can't do this by yourself. Other people are involved. You have to be good at the interpersonal. So here's your point, Bill. As much as this has gotten attention across the world for 3 decades, it's not about intrapersonal intelligence. It's not about the mind, the deeper mind-body work. It's not about who are you as a human being. It is not about how do we manifest the emotion, the feeling, okay, the consciousness, the sense of identity of who are people. This is simply how they can play those things out. So if I can put this in a nutshell, and we can talk about this more, all right, because here we are. Your work, everything you've been researching is the impact of opening up that intrapersonal capacity and intelligence and ability, opening up that awareness, that consciousness, so that you can do any one or all of these things in a more fulfilling, deeper way. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. That is the essence of my work. And that's how we connect. So we need a 3-dimensional wheel here one that contains that intrapersonal element, and then we're really off to the races.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. Yep.
I hope
Yeah.
that makes sense.
Yeah, that's beautiful. Yeah, one thing that it called, as you were describing that, one thing you were talking about was the difference between thinking about something and actually acting on it, because that's a different kind of learning. And that's one of the things that I've envisioned, these mind-body classes. What we're calling for is a 1 hour a day mind-body education program for public education around the world, which would incorporate, the 5 mind-body techniques that have a mountain of science behind them, which is meditation, Tai Chi, yoga, Qigong, and mindfulness. And I've always envisioned it as kind of a hybrid between health science and PE, because you have a physical element, especially with Tai Chi and yoga, and Qigong as well. But then there's also the consciousness aspect of it. And so, for example, I was never good in biology, because I always felt like biology was something on a chalkboard or in a textbook that had nothing to do with me. But if we have a mind-body program where, say, we're teaching kids about, for example, blood pressure and heart rate, in this cardiovascular system, and then we teach them techniques where they can actually experience, first of all, the sensation of their heart beating. And then second of all, as we teach them to go into alpha state, how to actually slow the heart rate, or to even lower the blood pressure if the blood pressure is high. And once I, as a young adult, after I got out of school and started practicing mind body, once I realized that biology was really about me, it was about this in here and what's happening in here, and that I play a role in what happens in here with my conscious awareness. And the same thing with physics. I was bored to death with physics in school, but once I got involved in mind body and energy work, and realizing that we're all energy and that we're made of energy, and that this energy of our consciousness and being can be affected by the vibratory rate of our consciousness, then all of a sudden I became just incredibly enamored with the concept of physics. So I think that's one of the things that mind body has to offer, is to really deepen that aspect of education, where you're learning on a multidimensional level and a real personal level, instead of like a abstract, external, you know what I mean?
Absolutely. Well, see, I have been famous and infamous for dealing with the issue of paradigms. And what I sent you earlier is a short essay that I wrote that really defines where my whole website is going now. And it's built around this concept of the 5th paradigm. And the 5th paradigm is, let's make it very simple. The 5th paradigm is our consciousness, when we are conscious that we are a being of energy, and that everything is energy manifesting in one way or another, and we can do something to move, enhance, etc., how that energy works, which opens doorways of possibility and opportunity for us, because it moves our whole being into a new dimension of possibility. Okay, so yeah, we're absolutely on the right track with that. And, I have, in the last, 6 months or so, 7 months, I have been actively involved in a course that is called Body, Mind, Tai Chi Yoga, where we also do some Qigong work. And, it has helped me biologically, okay? And as a being of energy, it's helped me enormously. I am more flexible, I am stronger, okay? I am able to move energy in my body better than I have been, and I've learned a lot about that already. But I mean, I can see the benefits of how it literally brings us to life.
Mhm.
Okay. And it moves us out of being a cognitive brain being exclusively. Okay. Where, and that's why education is so stuck and entrenched.
Mhm.
Everything is about how we produce things technically and cognitively,
Mhm.
and all the other dimensions of who we are basically taking less and less and less and less of a role in who we become.
Mhm.
And parents are frustrated by that, okay? Because they know their kids are more than that, and they know that life requires more than that. But the policymakers and the people who keep the system running and the institution running have
Mhm.
narrowed and narrowed and narrowed and narrowed the agenda down to, well, how are your grades and your test scores?
Yeah. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. Yep. I hear you. Yep. Yep.
I believe
But
that model, and I could be wrong on this, was based a lot on, the industrialization of our country,
mhm.
getting people to wake up at a certain hour, getting the kids trained for that. There might be some history majors out there that could elaborate, but I think that Newtonian model and industrial society created that. And I think in some respects, and maybe again I'm wrong, there's fear in China of, with Qigong learning, of opening
Oh,
that strength for people. It's empowerment.
Well,
it's empowerment,
I
and
have to intercede on China's behalf here. The Falun Gong issue is not a Qigong issue. It's a social political issue.
Oh yeah, I'm not
Yeah,
talking
they
about them.
don't suppress Qigong in China.
I'm not talking about them, Bill. I'm talking, in specifically, I'm talking about from what I've heard from other people that came from China was that empowerment part has been squashed. I don't want
Well,
to,
I think that's global. I think that's global.
well, that's what I'm trying to say.
Yeah, I just don't want to pick on China here. That's all.
Bill, if I can go back to the very beginning here, just on that point, perfect point, okay, about empowerment. If I can go back to the beginning, the system, okay, that Bloom put out, okay, his model came out in 1968. In 1963 was a giant report called the Equality of Educational Opportunity Report, otherwise known as the Coleman Report, about why our schools are not working effectively, and they certainly are not equal opportunity kinds of places, et cetera, et cetera. All right. Well, everything was, the Bloom's work was a response to that. And that all was about unequal test scores and unequal academic achievement. Okay. So all of that, so Bloom's work jumped into that bandwagon and said, yes, we can expand opportunity. Yes, we can do these things. Way more kids can be way more successful, et cetera, et cetera. Okay. If teachers would just do this, so like I said, it was a classroom model.
Mhm.
It took us 4 decades to realize outcome-based education at its heart is an empowerment model
Mhm.
where the adults and the system put stuff in the brains of the kids so that the kids will respond and learn. Okay. Empowerment comes from within. Okay. It is inner source driven. And what I've come to realize is, yes, I mean, I did this whole thing at the beginning here saying we are time-based, et cetera. What we really are, the mega paradigm, and the mega paradigm shift is from empowerment to empowerment.
Mhm.
And the systems of the world don't know how to handle that. They only know how to double down on empowerment.
Mhm.
And they don't know because so many of the people who pull the levers and drive the system and the politicians and on and on and on have never had the depth of inner experience that you're trying to cultivate in your work, and
Mhm.
I'm trying to cultivate and foster in this work I'm calling Fifth Paradigm.
Yeah, let me, I wanted to talk about one aspect of the Global Transformation Project. It operates on multidimensional levels, but one of the things about it is the way that we're approaching it is we know that and for younger children, it's not like we're really going to be teaching them how to go into alpha state, because younger children, I believe, do go into alpha state quite frequently. But what we're going to be doing is by offering mind-body education in age-appropriate ways all the way from kindergarten through high school, is we're going to be preserving that ability to go into alpha state, because children learn at an extraordinary rate up until about 7, I think. And you can probably validate that or challenge that or whatever. But that's one of the things that that these mind-body programs have to offer, is to bring the ability to go into alpha state, and which is about approximately 8 hertz. And we can measure that. There's actually brainwave scanners that are very affordable that schools could use to find out if their 1 hour a day mind-body program is actually teaching kids how to go into alpha state. And when they go into alpha state on a regular basis, what the research is showing is that you can increase IQs like 20%. You can increase GRE reading scores, verbal fluency, math proficiency skills, gamma wave complex consciousness, and all these things just from teaching children how to go into that 8 hertz alpha brainwave state on a daily basis. And so we're keeping it really simple and really scientific, so that it's really hard for people to discount. You see what I mean? So like a crystal arrow, keeping that precision and that sharpness. We're trying to teach kids how to do a science-based thing, which is take their brain waves into 8 hertz on a regular basis, which will boost their immunity profoundly, as well as all these other benefits. So that's kind of the crystal and arrow of how we're going to approach all the United Nations missions on the planet, with why they would want this to be part of their public education system, and then use that as a vehicle to get all this science that I just talked about with IQ, GRE reading score, math proficiency, verbal fluency, all these things and many more, out to public educators around the planet, so that public educators who are as enlightened as you are will be able to take that UN proclamation and be able to take it to their school board or their administration or whatever, and say, look at this science. We should consider moving this into education. So anyway, that's like a tactical thing. It's just that simplicity.
I understand that, and I agree with how the tactics have to be done.
Yeah.
In order to get something that is much deeper.
Yeah.
And much more profound into the picture.
Yep. Yeah, because see, one of the it's like I say, the Global Transformation Project, I just pretty much painted the goal of that. But for me personally, and one of the things that drove me to dedicate my life to seeing this become a manifestation in reality, is what I've experienced as I've gone through teaching in hospitals for 30 years, is that when people start having experiences, positive physical experiences and health experiences and mental and emotional and spiritual experiences, what they always say is, I wish that I would have learned this when I was younger. And so public education gives this opportunity to get it out there. And what the research shows is that it would save trillions of dollars in saved healthcare and social costs every single year into the future. And so we're talking about massive savings. And so that's another aspect of it too, that it would transform education, the science is in on that, and that it would save us trillions of dollars in future saved health and social costs because the science is in on that too. So that's that tactic. But then what happened with me was as I was gathering all this, physical health science, then it started to emerge into consciousness research that was being done. And we started to realize that the conscious, so this is my personal evolution with this. This isn't the official tactic of the Global Transformation Project, but what got me excited about it was when I started to realize that the science is showing that our consciousness doesn't stop at our skull. And the TM Foundation funded some really profound research over the decades. And what they found was that if they brought in 1%, the equivalent of 1% of high-level meditators into a city, that they could, in Washington, D.C., they dropped the violent crime rates by 23% during the high crime season. And then they did these studies with 48 cities, later with 48 other cities, and they all dropped their violent crime rates in comparison to the control cities. And that effect lasted for 5 years. And so, 1% of the world's population going into hyper-coherent consciousness. And then we found out, we had organized World Tai Chi Day over the last 23, 24 years. And we found out from the Princeton Engineering Anomalies Research Laboratory, the previous director of research at the Princeton Pear Labs, he founded the Global Consciousness Project, and they put computer sensors all over the planet that were able to detect shifts in the coherence of global consciousness. And they found out that World Tai Chi Day had increased coherence in global consciousness, not just for the participants, but for the whole planet, the consciousness of the whole planet. And so did the International Day of Yoga, and so did the International Day of Peace. So now with this, we know what the research is with the 1%, and we know the research from that was born from the Pear Labs shows that the whole global consciousness is affected by a very small number of people going into hyper-coherent consciousness. And so we could, by introducing, hundreds of millions of new meditators. And the thing is it doesn't matter if somebody's going into alpha state, it doesn't matter whether they're wise and 80 years old or whether they're 8 years old. If they're going into alpha state consciousness, and they get good at it, and they would if they did it for an hour a day, every day in school, we're talking about a shift in planetary consciousness in a really positive way.
I think I had a thought about your approach of an hour a day. And I wondered what would happen if that were spread out during the day, and that in classes in like high school, where you're literally every hour you're changing what you're doing, you would introduce that for literally no more than 5 minutes, and just let kids come into, an open inner state, let go of the drama and trauma and the stuff that goes on inevitably, and begin every period, every episode of whatever happens, even in elementary classrooms, because they shift from this to that to this to that. Open up sort of the capacity to look at it in a fresh way, in an open way, in an accepting way, periodically, rather than, because as soon as you say an hour a day, then that rings the alarm bell. Oh my God, we can't even teach, all the curriculum we have to teach because, there's not enough time. But if you make it informal and periodic, that could really make a difference.
Yeah, I think at the globaltransformationproject.org, I think what we should do is develop a page that has different options of how individual schools could implement this. But I have two thoughts on what you're talking about. What the Harvard research has shown is that if we have like a 30-minute meditation every day, then that makes us much more capable of going into very, very, very quick meditations. It makes very short, like 2, 3, 4, 5 minute meditations.
Yes.
Highly effective because we had that deeper alpha wave experience. And I find that in my own life. It's like if I'm doing my regular meditations, then when I'm, when I'm stuck at a red light and I'm stressing out, I can just kind of go into alpha state, and it's very effective if I'm doing my regular meditations. But if I just depend on the short ones, it's not as effective. So I think it's a combination of this. But the other thing that I wanted to mention is one of the things that we've envisioned, and it's because of our, before we started organizing World Tai Chi Day, we had no idea that mind-body teachers were in virtually every city on the planet. And, but we over the last 2 decades, we've become aware of that. And it was very eye-opening for me. I thought it was just something that people in California and China did. But it's everywhere. It is everywhere. Teachers are everywhere. And so we have people in different cities around the world who have studied mind-body practices, Tai Chi, Qigong, yoga, mindfulness, and meditation for decades. And they speak every language on the planet. So they're native language speakers for all the schools around the planet. And these people are an incredible resource that is in every community on the planet right now, and they're vastly underutilized. And I mean, I can speak from personal experience. I should be in every elementary school in the city, and I'm not. Now we have gotten into public education. That's how, kind of all this evolved. But one of the things that led me to the idea of an hour is that if you had an hour, you could have like a half hour of Tai Chi or a half hour of yoga, or you could have a Tai Chi teacher on Monday and a yoga teacher on Tuesday. And it would bring, I mean, yes, we do want to teach teachers how to do mind body, and we do want to teach teachers how to lead classes, for that 5 minute, 3, 4, 5 minute period you're talking about, into alpha state before they start their intellectual process of the class. But one of the things that I think is so important is to get those resources of those mind-body teachers into public education, employed in public education, exposing kids to high-level mind-body. Because if they were doing it an hour a day, if they had Tai Chi one day, yoga one day, mindfulness one day, meditation, Qigong one day, by the time they graduated from high school, we'd be talking about yogi masters and Tai Chi masters, far beyond where I'm at. And this has transformed my life in unbelievable ways. So I do want to make sure we figure out a way to do this as well, but we could have different options so that we don't put people off. We could have options of what you suggested at first, or hybrids of these two things. But ultimately, I would like to see the world take advantage of all these mind-body teachers all around the planet and recognize them for the incredible resource and treasure that they are in their communities, and make them part of the public education system too.
Can I jump in here for a second?
Please.
I come from an evidence-based medicine agency, and I know that that's how you sell things. Okay, if you've got the science to back it up. But we did a national study 10 years ago about life sciences education in the classroom, and it was abysmal across the country. I mean, we were looking at developing clinical practice guidelines, and when we got to the part of creating the patient materials, we found out that people were basically illiterate about their own body systems. I mean, they'd never learned any of this. You couldn't just jump in and tell them how they could treat different conditions, because they really didn't even know how their bodies worked.
Right.
And so that was a failure in the school systems again. And you referenced that earlier about the fact that they focus in on these various test scores, and that's what they're held accountable for. Yeah. So just even getting them to the point to look at how they could integrate just basic life sciences education. And we were talking to the school systems about like maybe a health class, like you'd be lucky if they even had a health class in their curricula. So I think it's wonderful that you're looking at trying to provide some kind of a package, to teach them how to do this and involve everybody else. I mean, my own journey, which probably goes along with yours, is I'm coming out of an evidence-based science background in health communications. And then at that time, it would have been considered going over to the dark side as I started to explore becoming, Reiki, because I looked at the trials that showed that people that had Reiki pre and post surgical procedures had experienced less pain and had better outcomes, better health outcomes. And I was just up at the shock trauma in Baltimore a couple of weeks ago with their Stop the Bleed program. And they were telling me that they now have on staff, they have Reiki masters, they have sound healers, they have all these people because they've done to show the vital signs on people that are having this before and after traumatic experiences. So I think it's starting to get in more into the health field, that there's more acceptance of these alternative or complementary, whatever you want to call the modalities, whether it's mindful meditation or Tai Chi or medical Qigong or all these other kinds of things. So how you integrate at an early age, that was the secret. When we were looking at life sciences education, we said, you got to start in kindergarten. And by teaching the kids, you'll reach their parents.
Right. That's
another
right. Aspect of this. Yeah. And what we're suggesting with the Global Transformation Project, and I'll turn it over to you, Bill, right after this, is what we're recommending. If you go to the website and poke around, you'll see a lot of information there, as like what I'm talking about right now. But what we envision is, like, for example, with kindergartners, which I've worked with all different levels. That's how all this stuff evolved in my mind. And this can all be taught in age appropriate ways. And so, like with kindergartners, you can start teaching them animal qigong, where you're breathing and you're expressing, or you're a tiger or whatever. And we emphasize all this has to be playful, and kids have to have an opt-out. So anytime we do anything in public schools or corporations or prisons, anywhere where you have a captive audience, we always say there has to be an opt-out, because the only way it's going to work is if people want to be there. And so that's what we're recommending for the Global Transformation Project, that no country, no school, no kid has to do this. It's an opportunity for educators to bring education to another level. But yeah, what we're suggesting is that you teach kids in age appropriate ways, starting from kindergarten. So they're learning how to breathe and feel, mindfulness, but you're not teaching it to them intellectually. You're giving them exercises, time-tested exercises developed over thousands of years to be able to experience these states. And then it gets more sophisticated as they get older.
The dilemma we have in modern countries is that they have been locked into a fixed notion of learning and what's valuable to learn, for about 150 years or so. Okay, and I'm sure that it's gone prior and prior to that. But there was a I'm going to call it notoriously influential national study done in the United States in 1983. Was called A Nation at Risk. Those of you who are older may have heard of it. But this Nation at Risk happened in the Reagan administration. And the man who was the Secretary of Education at the time, Carroll Bell, under the threat that the US Department of Education was going to get eliminated, basically said, well, we need something here to make the education so important that they won't eliminate it. So anyway, he created this big giant panel, commission of people, and they issued this report. And the centerpiece of the report is that education needed to get back to not just to basics, but it had to focus on what they called the 5 new basics. And the 5 new basics were 4 years of English, 3 years of math, etc. Okay. And so I wrote this scathing article about how limited and limiting that was, et cetera, et cetera. And I got a comment back from a fellow and said, well, if you think 1983 is a problem, calling it the new basics How about 1893? Because in 1893, 90 years previously, okay, a body of 10 university presidents was commissioned. It was called the Committee of 10, and they made a report and they said, we need the 5 new basics: 4 years of English, 3 years of math, 4 years of social studies. It was the same thing. It's entrenched.
Mhm.
It's entrenched, the priorities. And now they call it STEM or STEAM, depending on whether you want to put the arts in there or not. But it's science, technology, okay, English, mathematics, and then maybe they throw in some arts to give you the A word or the A letter. And that's been the obsessive thing now in the last about 30 years.
Mhm.
So all of that has nothing to do, Bill, with what you're talking about.
Mhm.
Okay? I mean, it is systemically, paradigmatically, politically, and legally entrenched.
Right. Well,
That's
the way that we look at this is we're the first generation in human history that has had this massive amount of science that shows what mind-body practice can do. Now, people have known this throughout history because they practiced it, but they didn't have a scientific validation of it. We're the first generation in history to have this science. And the other thing that I didn't mention earlier is that propelled us towards the Global Transformation Project concept of the UN resolution for mind-body education and public education was that when we discovered that in 2014, the United Nations General Assembly voted in the International Day of Yoga to advance world health and world harmony with very same purposes of the Global Transformation Project. And what's really significant about that is that it set a record for co-sponsoring nations. It had 177 co-sponsoring nations that created an International Day of Yoga to educate the planet. And so this UN resolution would be a huge boon to educators who are progressive in consciousness, and then they would have that with them. But the way that we approach the paradigm shift that we're going to is we just keep it real simple. Science shows if we can teach kids how to go into alpha state, they're going to get higher IQs, better verbal fluency, better GRE reading scores, better math proficiency skills, the basic core things that any rational educator would want. And the way that we look at it is, yes, this is a new paradigm, but new paradigms are possible. If they weren't, women would still be subjugated all over the planet and we would still have slaves. So we know new paradigms are possible, but what makes the new paradigm possible is those of us that are awake just chanting what we're chanting, that it's time. The motto of the Global Transformation Project is, it is time to use science in public education, because we're the first generation to have this overwhelming science to show that mind-body practice would create the most incredibly receptive students to information that you could possibly create. I mean, we could have, like, multi-million-dollar classrooms with every state-of-the-art thing, but the learning happens in here. And the science shows that if we just simply teach kids how to go into alpha state, just keep it real simple. We can measure whether they're being taught how to go into alpha state. And then all the magic happens, and we save trillions of dollars year after year. So we just keep this mantra. Those of us that are awake, we keep chanting the mantra that the way that we're doing things is not rational. It's not sane. It's not economically logical. And we keep repeating that, and we repeat that with people we know, and they repeat that with people we know, and that's how you build a global movement. That's how we built World Tai Chi Day. It was this incredible grind of just repeating a mantra that it was time for people to know about these things. And so we can create a new paradigm, but it starts here, and we can't let the density of the existing reality control this. And that's where I find going into alpha state so helpful, to keep me so clear on this, because it's so easy for the world to tell me, oh, no, you can't do that for this, that, or the other reason. And God knows they're endless. I do so many of these interviews, they just never stop, and they come from so many different angles. So I have to go back to alpha state. When I go back to alpha state, then I get back into that clarity of consciousness where, well, yeah, we got mind body teachers all over the planet. We got this science that, you show it to any educator and they would be insane not to want to have this in their classroom. And that's our approach to create a new paradigm.
Now, I want to challenge you. Okay?
Please do.
Okay, here we go. I want to challenge you to take your work and your conception of it deeper. Okay, which we had to do with outcome-based education. And we had to do it by shifting and changing the driving question. And it went from what do students need to learn, et cetera, to become successful students so they can go to college, okay, to a series of things that included what will they face out there in life once they're in college or finished with college or even finished with high school. I mean, what are the things for which they need to be prepared? Because life is not going to be filled with school subjects.
Right.
All right. Well, that evolved to finally asking the question, what kind of human beings do we want to send out the door who will make the world a better place? Now, that's the commonality to me of what you're working on and what I've been working on. Okay. What kind of human beings, not what technique do we use to get them to a specific mental state. It is growing the whole concept of a deep, empowered human being. How do we get that to happen? And I want to just put that in the conversation as a major driving factor.
Right. Well, we know that when people go into alpha state on a regular basis, one of the things that happens is that the empathy and compassion centers of their brain get larger and more active, and the fear and stress parts of their brain get smaller, physically smaller. And most awake people realize that fear creates all kinds of problems.
Yes.
It creates all kinds of problems. Empathy and compassion solves lots of problems. And so that's one aspect of what these actualized students, because when they're going into alpha state on a regular basis, that's going to happen. They're going to have better interactions with the people around them because their empathy and compassion is functioning better, and their fear and stress is working smaller. And then we also know that these students that are going to have a greater sense of empathy and compassion for their fellow human beings are going to be more proficient at gamma wave consciousness, multidimensional problem-solving consciousness. This is all measurable, it's all science, so that they'll be able to find more elegant win-win solutions when they go out into the world. And so a big part of the Global Transformation Project for me evolved out of my understanding of Taoist thought, because the way the Taoists look at things is they look at it like the tree of life. And what the world is doing right now is it's scurrying around all these sick leaves. So it's trying to fix, the health crisis. It's trying to fix the economic crisis. It's trying to fix global conflict problems. It's trying to, just all the myriad things, that you just see on the news or read on the internet all the time. But the way the Taoists look at it is you find out how you can feed the root. And if you can feed the root the nutrients, then what's going to happen is all those leaves are going to heal. So in Taoist philosophy, we call it fixing things without fixing things. It's the effortless way. It's the Wu way. And so by offering this alpha state immersion, an hour a day, or however much we can get schools to do it around the planet, and create more empathetic, compassionate human beings whose IQs are about 20 points higher, and also have this gamma wave creative consciousness to be able to, and the research shows that regular meditators are more likely to actualize the lives that they would enjoy living. So we're talking about, and then we know the brain waves don't stop at the brain, so they're going to affect the global consciousness as well. And so we're talking about creating a pathway for this larger actualized planet to come out of the public education system because of these consciousness changes that happen in the mind. And the quantum physicists, the pioneers in quantum physics, they said consciousness is where everything happens. And so that's where we're going.
I want to allow me to, if I may, put some kind of a spin on that. And that is, it needs I think it needs a frame of reference, because developing all of these capacities, etc. I'm speaking of my own experience now, which has been kind of extraordinary when it comes to unusual spiritual experiences and the depth of them, etc., etc. And we don't need to go into that. Okay.
We can.
But it is, well, okay, here we go. But it has given me a language for the experiences. Okay. That is, so the language has given me a sense of self-identity, self-realization, I'm going to call it mission for myself, or what it is that I'm manifesting in the world, not just having inner experiences.
Mm-hmm.
It is basically said now, I'm having the inner experiences, but how can that be channeled in a way that is making a difference or is pursuing this kind of intention versus that kind of intention, or bringing this kind of service to people versus this kind of service to people. It is basically the language of how do I get past the 3D ego needs of the personality, and how do I use what you're doing as a tool to expand the higher consciousness, purpose, and capacity of the human being, and foster that in a deliberate kind of way.
Mm-hmm.
That's where I'd like to see the two come together.
Well, I would like to see exactly what you're talking about, and that's what I hope all this will be leading to. As we progress down this path, is to usher in a whole new possibility for education on all these levels, where kids are taking this new higher level of consciousness and intelligence and creativity, and creating an education system where they start learning how to manifest this or follow the threads of that in their own life. And so there's absolutely no disagreement between you and me on this. I absolutely see that. The only thing that I want to reiterate is because of what I went through 24 years organizing World Tai Chi Day, I saw how difficult it is to get people like focused on something, like a myriad people all over the planet speaking different languages and different cultures and everything, to get a focus on something. And it's like I had to just really just boil things down to this very extremely concise diamond precision of goal, which was, in the case of World Tai Chi Day, it was, hold these events all over the planet, use that as a vehicle to get the media, use that as a vehicle to share the science on mind body with the planet, and as a vehicle to get governments all over the planet to officially endorse Tai Chi and Qigong for their populations. And we did all that, but we had to do it with a real concise thing. And in the case of World Tai Chi Day, it was, the whole world's going to come together and do Tai Chi and Qigong on the last Saturday of April. And so that's what when we went into the Global Transformation Project, I understood from the pain of my experience of global organizing that you had to have an extremely concise message. And so what I've boiled it down to, and it took me a long time to get this because I wrote a 700-page book on all the science. So it took me a long time to be able to distill it down. And the distillation of it is that any educator on the planet, they would be insane to say, we don't want to teach our kids something that's going to make their IQs 20 points higher and increase their GRE reading score and increase their math proficiency skill and increase their verbal fluency and boost their immunity and reduce bullying in the school. Boom. There's no educator that could look at that and say, no, we don't want that, and still be considered a rational educator. And so it's just that concision. So there's no argument between me and you on our goals. And I totally envision that what you're talking about will follow in the wake of what we're trying to do. But I'm just a real practical, hands-on organizer who's been through the pain of trying to organize a global movement. And man, it is really easy for people to lose focus and lose track of what it is that you're trying to make happen. And so I just felt compelled to explain why this tactic is to get that membrane broken. Once that membrane's broken, I see it opening up for all kinds of possibilities. And I think the Global Transformation Project website could be a great vehicle for people like yourselves to envision other possibilities. We could put it there, and then educators could come there and be able to entertain lots of different concepts.
Well, you see, I don't want to oversimplify this, but from my perspective, what you've worked on is something that is very individual. That is, it opens up the individual. It helps the individual achieve more of this, that, and the other kind of thing. What I've been focused on has been, how do we get the system to open up to a set of possibilities that could nurture that as well as other things. Mm-hmm. The common ground is breaking through the incredible institutional and paradigmatic inertia around education. Because my experience with Tai Chi and Qigong and the other things here, okay, is that that's all done for people of all ages, all right, as sort of an extracurricular activity of their life because they want to improve their life. Mm-hmm. Okay, you bringing things into education in a formalistic way is tough. Believe me, I have lived that. When I started, I had hair. Okay, you've got a lot more than I do. All right.
Oh, it's all lighting, trust me.
Yeah. But when I've been working at this, trying to open up the system thinking, etc. But I've had to bring it back to this issue I raised earlier. What kind of human beings? Not how do kids learn more curriculum? It's what kind of human beings? What is the larger so what issue? Mm-hmm. Okay, so what if we do this, and so what if we do that? What is going to be the larger consequence? Mm-hmm. And you've got your finger on, both kinds of consequences, I think. Mm-hmm. You've got the cognitive, educational, I call them edu-centric consequences. Mm-hmm. Okay, here's all that stuff. Mm-hmm. But then, you are also saying, but then people really will do more of this in their life and more of that, and consciousness will increase, etc. That's right. Now, I want to give some fuel to that fire, okay, of having people see that the larger human consequences of this, the larger human benefits of this is beyond achieving in-school subjects. Mm-hmm. Okay, because I've spent my career trying to get people out of school subjects. Mm-hmm. realizing, I mean, that's why the life performance wheel is there. Okay.
Mhm.
That wheel took 3 years to develop from the first day that I came up with the idea and started working on all of this and said, we have got to get beyond Bloom's taxonomy, okay, and start dealing with real application in people's lives. Okay. It took 3 years. I went to every kind of person you could imagine with that wheel and said, okay, what does it need? What needs to be changed? What's incomplete? What should we add? Because the wheel, from a life performance point of view, okay, the wheel applies to every kind of life role we have. Parents have to do all those things. Corporate executives have to do all those things. Okay. I mean, everybody in between has to do those kinds of things all the time to make their lives work in a modern society, etc. In one way or another, they have to do that, not occupationally, but in terms of the functions. And now I'm realizing, okay, for all the utility and exposure this framework has gotten, it is still vastly incomplete. Okay, and it's incomplete in those intrapersonal, humanistic, human identity, self-expansion elements. And that's where we meet. Okay, it's cultivating that, giving it a name. Okay, not the technique, the name. It's what we're doing is growing human beings with higher consciousness, greater visions of, okay, bringing service and compassion to the world, etc. That's the deeper part of what you're about from my point of view, and the deeper part that I have finally gotten to as I've become less and less and less and less focused on empowerment and more focused on empowerment.
Yeah.
Because empowerment is all about inner consciousness and the willingness of the individual to step up.
Yeah.
And really declare themselves as a human being. Here's who I am. Here's my uniqueness. Here are my gifts. This is what I want for my life, not for the credentialing system's life,
Right.
etc.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, well, one of the things in my personal, evolution through mind body, I started with mind body. I grew up in a small rural oil and farming town in western Kansas, so I had no exposure to meditation or mind body or anything like that. Actually, my only exposure to it was when I watched the Kung Fu series with David Carradine, and I was riveted by it. And but then what happened was, in my 20s, I got married, and when I got married, I started having a lot of post-traumatic stress disorder stuff come up, because my father was in 3 years of frontline combat, and so I started to go see a therapist, because I didn't want to bring that into my life as a father, because we were getting ready to have kids. And anyway, the therapist said, "Have you ever thought about trying mind body?" And so then I found out there was a Tai Chi meditation class, and so I started taking it, and then I got just fascinated with this stuff, and I started trying different kinds of meditation, yoga, all kinds of things. And one of the things that happened with me after I started doing mind body was, man, I just, I guess it was, part of it was the fear and stress part of my brain was starting to shrink. And and I just was so interested in things, things that I was interested in, not what somebody else was trying to impose on me, and say, this is what you're supposed to be interested in. And so, I took a modern dance class. That was one of the scariest things I ever did in my life. And then I took an improvisational acting class, which was even more scary than that. And it just started just popping open this life for living life kind of feeling in me. and it was going into alpha state. And so if we can foster that in kids, I think that there's going to be this hunger for exploration of who they are as a human being and finding their place. Now, we can facilitate it by making changes in the education system over time. And I absolutely, that's the long-term vision of all this stuff. But just giving kids that regular immersion in alpha state is going to free them up in ways that it'll be harder for the dysfunctional system we have to quash. But the other aspect that I see of it is if we can get this crystal arrow through the United Nations so that educators all over the planet have the validity of the science and the UN General Assembly advocating mind, body, and public education, that it will open a wake for more things like a more comprehensive educational process that really facilitates people becoming real human beings like you're talking about. But it's like I said, you know what my reasons are because of organizing and knowing the challenges of organizing a global thing. It's a huge thing. I'm not a multi-millionaire. I didn't organize World Tai Chi Day because I got loads of money to throw around. I have no notoriety. I don't have a PhD. I don't even have a bachelor's degree. So there's nothing about me that made it happen, except that I knew what it took to organize, and what it takes to organize. It takes a relentless, singular thing that you can get people to wrap their heads around. And so again, I'm not at odds with you on any of this. I am totally in agreement, and I hope that we can put this on the website so that when educators come to the website, they'll see, what the larger possibilities of this are. But I don't see it as your way versus my way. I see it as, I'm trying to facilitate exactly what you're talking about.
Well, I'm not trying to do an either or, but I do want to put something on the table here that is, we have both avoided saying, and it's got to be said, and then maybe I will take you up on the challenge of describing a little bit more about some of my inner experiences that have brought me here.
Well, that'd be interesting.
I'm going to talk. I'll put two words together and pretend they're kind of the same thing. One is the word soul, and the other is the word essence. Now, what I am increasingly focused on, and what that 2-page document that I sent you called "What is the Fifth Paradigm?" What that is about is our essence as beings here on this planet. Okay? It is more than being biological beings. It is more than being physical beings, etc. All of these, alpha states and whatever states, and by the way, I have done a ton of high gamma work, okay? All of that is dimensions of energy, okay, that don't fall into the little boxes and cubicles and all of that stuff, but people are becoming more and more and more aware that that exists, and that's who they are. So my focus right now is in bringing people to an awareness of that stuff exists.
Mm-hmm.
That stuff is for real.
Mm-hmm.
That's who you are. There are more dimensions in life and existence than all of that. And that's why I have found the work I'm doing with this body and brain yoga work out here in Oregon, where I live. Okay, all of that, the focus of that work is on our spiritual essence,
Mm-hmm.
opening up that whole sense of self and who we are and what our capacities are and what our potentials are,
Mm-hmm.
that go beyond the box called, well, you're a 3D being and this is how long you live and this is what happens, and then you die and you either go to heaven or you go to hell or some other place like that. And it's just, there is too much out there in terms of physical evidence, physical experiences of people, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera, that document that.
Mhm, mhm.
Okay. So if I may, I'm going to jump into the deepest end of the deepest swimming pool I know about, called the Marianas Trench, I guess, here. And I'm going to ask to bring up the last of the diagrams in the list, that big symbolic thing.
Give me a moment.
Okay.
While she's doing that, Bill, I'll let you get right back to this. We just have a question real quick. Now,
Sure.
from what you said earlier, have you had some extraordinary consciousness experiences?
I'm about to show you one.
Oh, okay. All right. Yeah, because in September, we're going to have Dr. Kim Penberthy from the University of Virginia Psychiatry Department, and that's her field of study, is extraordinary consciousness experiences.
Aha. Okay.
Yeah, I'm sorry, I lost it.
CJ,
Yvonne, do you have it?
I have it. Just give me a second, please.
And you said it was the last slide, right?
It's the last slide. It's number 14. I think it's number, yeah, there we go. Number 14.
Okay.
Okay.
That,
That,
wow.
yeah,
It's beautiful.
wow. So here goes. I'm going to, if you give me just a few minutes, I'm going to tie two totally different things together around this symbol. So let's go back to May 26th of 2011. Okay, so 12 years ago. And I was doing it was the next to the last major shamanic journey out into the Utah desert that I had been doing for a decade. And we were sitting at the fire, and there are lots of things that led up to this, but we're sitting at the fire in the afternoon. Okay, and we honor the four directions, the energy, the unique energies that are in the four directions of east, west, north, south. So I'm sitting in the west, looking to the east where the fire is, etc. And I'm in a state of, I'll just call it, I call it desert stupor. Okay, but I'm in a sort of an altered state, but no stuff is going on. I'm just, eyes are closed, sitting there, absolutely open. And I have a blast of energy go through me that almost knocked me over. And I instantly knew what it was, and I instantly knew what it said. 5 words. 5 words. And I sort of woke up. And the shaman was across the fire, kind of just looking at me. And I called him over. And in stupor language, because I could hardly talk, I had him draw a triangle on the ground. And I just pointed to the 3 points of the triangle and said, love, light, and life. And then I incoherently waved my arms like an infinity symbol. And I said, infinite. And I had him draw the infinity symbol inside of the triangle. And then I had him put a circle around it with the line underneath. And I'm mumbling to him, that's an Egyptian hieroglyph. It's a Shen. And it is the Shen for eternity. Okay? And I just said, love, light, and life, infinite, eternal. That's you, that's me, that's everybody. And he said, oh my God. 2 weeks ago, in a class that I've been taking with an amazing, amazing man, we went through a process we've never gone through before. It's the 7th time I have taken this course with him, because it goes deeper and deeper and deeper and deeper and deeper. And the basic essence of the meditation we did was, when you have disappeared and released everything that your ego is attached to in this life that defines who you are, what are you? And it came back instantly. Love, light, life, infinite, eternal. That's it. Period. That is my self. That is my empowered self, etc.
Beautiful.
That night, when the sun went down, that triangle appeared in the sky.
Wow.
And we were just screaming and yelling, oh my God, how did this happen? Oh, what is this, etc. And he said, well, look what you brought in, brother. Okay. And then there was a circle, a golden circle. Okay. Total unity of everything
In the sky?
in the sky.
So the triangle and the circle?
Not together, 2 separate places, just 2 close to each other in the sky.
Wow.
And they were up there for minutes and minutes and minutes and minutes. And we just kept screaming and yelling and, oh my God, how is this possible, etc.
Yeah.
Now, if you believe that we are beings of energy,
Yeah.
and if you believe like I do, that we are both transmitters of energy and receivers of energy, that is, we are magnets as well as being transmitters, then all we did is go to a dimension of energy and manifest it.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Now, I've had lots more. Okay.
That's pretty
I've got
amazing.
lots more. But the point is, we are so much more than our left brain consciousness
Right.
in a box that is educentric and cognitive. We
That's
are
the-
so much more than that. It's unbelievable.
That's the biggest scandal. That is the biggest scandal.
Sure.
Is that we have all been sold a rational world. Now, I'm not saying there's anything wrong with rationality, but it's just a tiny slice of the universe. And we've been sold that you're only allowed to think and perceive within this tiny little slice of reality. You know what I mean?
And who says what's all we're allowed to do? See, that's the big question. Who says we're only allowed to do that?
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
Well,
And it's called cultural
Yeah.
convention.
mm-hmm.
It's because how we grew up.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. Now, way back in the early part of this conversation, you said something about the word 7 years old or something. Okay.
Uh-huh.
The fact is, for the first 7 years, okay, our rational brain hasn't developed.
Well, it hasn't been imposed upon us, I think might be.
No, the rational brain hasn't fully developed, etc. And consequently, everything we learn and take in, we take in as a sponge, just because that's kind of how it is. And we get, that starts to be imprinted in our subconscious.
Mhm.
And the subconscious becomes our active paradigm. And it's reinforced by everything in the conventional culture.
Mhm. Mhm.
Okay. So before kids even get to school, they're already pre-programmed to accept life is this, and this.
Mhm.
Okay. Now, here's the exception. More and more souls are coming into the world as little baby children who have not had that kind of past life prior conditioning as a soul. Okay. And they're coming in wide open, pure alpha state. Okay. Oh, wow. Look what we could do with life.
Mhm.
We could be creative. We could manifest things. We could do all kinds of wonderful things, et cetera,
Mhm.
before they get to school,
Mhm.
which tells them, oh, God, no, you got to do it this way because this is how life is, or you won't get a credential.
Right.
Okay. And it's before, in many cases, their family tell them, oh, just stop imagining things
Mhm. Mhm.
because it's not practical and it's not real.
Yeah.
And it's not in some official religious book of one kind or another, because that's how life is supposed to be, because it's been in the religious books for thousands of years.
Mhm.
So the cultural paradigmatic conditioning we've all been through, and it's a part of all of us, okay, has been restrictive, but Bill, it's starting to blow open.
Mhm.
Because more and more people are seeing this isn't true. That's not all of it. There is so much more this, there is so much more of that.
Yep.
One of my favorite TV programs, okay, is Ancient Aliens.
Oh yeah.
And it's not because of flying saucers, it's because they are showing things in the historical sense that are about civilizations that must have existed on this planet thousands and thousands and thousands of years before anybody
Mhm.
thought civilizations could have existed here.
Graham
So they're
Hancock is,
blowing open the story in their own unique, wonderful way.
yeah, Graham Hancock is another great resource for that.
Yep, absolutely, absolutely. I have lain in the sarcophagus in the king's chamber of the Great Pyramid.
Wow.
It is an energy machine. If your consciousness has opened up enough to receive that vibration, that's the whole issue here. Okay. If
Yeah, I
we
think-
can open up enough to receive some of these possibilities.
Right. And that segues perfectly with what the GTP's goals are, is to affect the vibratory rate of the whole planet. To bring the vibratory rate of the whole consciousness of the whole planet to a different level. Because I think we're in the middle of a great awakening. And I think a big part of it, a lot of people are feeling a lot of turmoil because old false idols and false gods that they've held on to, whether it's political institutions or media institutions or whatever, it's becoming increasingly apparent that, we thought that they were the arbiters of, truth and reality. And we start to realize, well, Jewel had a great song. She said that something about the people on TV. They say they're better than you, and you agree. And I think a lot of people are waking up to the fact that they're not smarter than us. And there's a very tiny slice of reality that you get from mainstream culture, and it's, you know, it's that tight little squeezed rational, you know, limited view of the planet, and it's a pretty dismal picture of the future. And but the science shows a whole different possibility for humanity. And one of the things that I get into in my public presentations on a regular basis is I ask people, I say, do you think that violent crime is worse than it's ever been before? And the majority always think that it is.
Oh my
And I
gosh.
say, no, actually, I have the FBI and UN data, and it's at 40-year lows. Now, what has happened over the last 40 years? Well, in the last 40 years, mind-body practices have spread around the planet like a wildfire. And so, you know, there's like this whole other paradigm of possibility for humanity. And you're not, like Gil Scott Heron said, the revolution is not going to be televised. It's not going to be brought to you by, you know, General Motors and all that stuff. It's something that's happening in the fabric of the consciousness of the planet. And it's huge and it's beautiful and it's scientifically measurable for the first time in human history. And Nikola Tesla said that when consciousness starts to focus on non-physical or consciousness, it's going to make more advances in 1 decade than all the history of previous science. And so that's why we've dedicated ourselves to bringing the scientists that are leading this onto this program, because people need to know about the power of their consciousness, because that is part of the Great Awakening.
Could we bring up my Opening to Greater Realities book cover?
Do you know what slide that's
I
on?
think
It's
three,
about
maybe.
it's about
Oh,
halfway
halfway.
down. It's about number 6 or so.
This one?
You're not sharing, Siobhan?
Oh, I'm sorry. Give me a
That's okay.
second.
This has been great, Bill.
Can you see this?
That's the one.
Yeah, beautiful.
The story I just told you is in this book, Bill.
With the and that was in Utah, right? In the Native Americans land.
No, it's in an area, we work in an area, this was in an area outside of Arches National Park,
Oh, okay.
but where that happened.
Okay.
Okay. Well, the messages of this book, this is an autobiography. It's 400 pages long. About all the kinds of experiences that have happened to me of that kind, certainly not all of them that deep, but the kinds of experiences that have happened up through 2012. So everything that has happened in the past decade that's been happening for me isn't even in this book. But there is so much in this book that is so confirmatory of what you're talking about when you really open up those inner capacities.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
When you, I mean, I've had I'm going to say half of the really amazing stories, anecdotes, etc., in the book happened in doing neurofeedback work
Mm-hmm.
of a very unconventional kind. Okay, with a woman who is an incredible genius and Sufi master, etc., and scientist and MD. Okay, it just opens up channels of connection, almost portholes through, okay, energy fields that, oh my gosh, where did this come from? Holy moly.
Mm-hmm.
How can this kind of thing be happening to a left brain Harvard professor?
Yeah.
Well, guess what? It can.
We know,
Okay.
You know, in September, we're having Dr. Penberthy from the University of Virginia. And what got her started on her research was that she started prescribing mind-body meditation to her psychiatric patients for any condition. She knew it would help any condition. But then what happened was they started reporting extraordinary consciousness experiences. And so then they did a large study where they taught people who'd never meditated before how to meditate. And over 50% of them started reporting extraordinary consciousness experiences. So, you know, I just believe that school children all over the planet are able to have extraordinary consciousness experiences that can lead to planetary changes, just like your work is leading to and our work is leading to. And if we can facilitate that, you know what I mean? That those extraordinary consciousness experiences,
That's right.
God knows where it'll take us all.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
Yeah, I had an extraordinary consciousness experience when I was about 6 years old, and you know, it took me all these years. I'm 66 now, but it took all these years to figure out what that was all about. And I had actually kind of forgotten about it on a conscious level, you know, for about 14 years. And then when I went to California and my psychologist suggested that I try mind-body stuff, and then I started learning how to meditate and do Tai Chi and Qigong. And when I did that first Qigong meditation, it felt like I was kind of floating in space. And then it reminded me of an extraordinary consciousness experience that I had when I was 6 years old. And what happened was I was asleep. It was about middle of the night. And I opened my eyes because I felt like somebody was watching me. And I opened my eyes. I was sleeping with my mom and my dog in the back of the Blue Star Motel. My parents owned a small motel, the Blue Star Motel. We slept in the office in case people would come in at night. And anyway, I opened my eyes and there was this angelic figure. Now, at the age that I'm at, I don't say it was an angel. I did that for years. But I don't do that anymore because I'm understanding the energetic nature of the universe and how the universe can form and whatever things resonate with us and feel comforting to us. You know what I mean? It can express itself in myriad ways. But to me, it looked like an angel, and it looked like a translucent angel, like it was made out of water, and the water was like rippling.
Okay.
You could see through it, you know, it was clear and crystal. And anyway, it beckoned me, it wanted me to come to it, and I didn't want to. I was, you know, I thought, oh my God, what is this? And I shrunk back in the covers, and then I felt myself being pulled out of the bed, and I started trying to reach for my mother and my dog. And I remember my hands going right through them. So I was having an out-of-body experience. Now, I didn't, you know, the 6-year-old me didn't comprehend that. All I knew was that I was being pulled out of bed, and then I was in this angel's arms, and it felt very comfortable. And then we took off and flew across town, and it essentially, the long story short, what I realize now looking back is it was teaching me how to meditate. It was teaching me, I can't tell you how, because it wasn't verbal. It was like, you know.
That's right.
Yeah, but it was teaching me to breathe in. And then when I exhaled, it was teaching me that I had to let go. I had to let go mentally, emotionally, physically, on every level. And if I let go completely, I would start to lift up off the sidewalk, like I was flying, like I was floating in the air. And so then 20 years later, when the psychologist recommended mind body, I started learning how to mind body, do meditation. I had that first night. I struggled with it after that, but that first night was magical because I just had this feeling like I was floating. And then I remembered that experience from when I was a child. And so I just find it ironic that I had this angelic experience at 6 years old, and then, you know, almost 40 years later, ended up organizing a global meditation event. You know what I mean? It's like, what do kids have in them that they don't know? Because I forgot about that experience until later in my 20s when I learned how to meditate. And what was really interesting about it, you know, you were talking about the images that you had, what the universe presented for you when you had that experience. What I found out later was that my wife had an extraordinary consciousness experience. Now, mine was an angel because I was raised as a Lutheran boy in Western Kansas, but she was a Catholic in Hong Kong. And so she had an experience where she had she said she saw Mary, you know, Mother Mary.
Yeah.
And she was just as real as me and you right now. You know, that's how real she was. She was only like about 12 feet away from my wife. And anyway, what was fascinating was that I went back and I tried to start doing the math. And we think that it's possible that we may have had those experiences at exactly the same moment, because she had hers in the middle of the day in Hong Kong, and I had mine in the middle of the night in Kansas. And we were about the same age. So there's a real distinct possibility that that happened at precisely the same moment on opposite sides of the planet. And then somehow we found each other in Kansas, from Hong Kong and Kansas. And then we created a global, facilitated a global meditation event that the Princeton project showed had created greater coherence in global consciousness. So it just makes me believe that, there's kids in these schools all over the planet that just have these little seeds about to burst, and anything we can do to just give them a little space, so that sprout can come out of the seed,
Absolutely. Well, I'll tell you, there has been an awakening among adults, okay, that really got, to me, the kickstart of this all happened somewhere around 1995. Okay, and in 1995, just three things came out. Okay, and there are countless others that probably did too.
Mm-hmm.
Neil Donald Walsh wrote his first book, Conversations with God. Okay. Our friend wrote his books, or Daniel Goleman, excuse me, okay? His big tome, Emotional Intelligence, came out that year. And David Hawkins wrote his book, Power versus Force, where he introduced the science of kinesiology, that is muscle testing, arm testing, where essentially some inner knowing part of you, because it's not your brain, okay, knows the answers to things that are, quote, timeless.
Yeah, I'm just, let me interrupt for just a second, because I want to speak to what you're talking about. When I was about in third grade, I was a Cub Scout, and the Cub Scout master had somebody come to our meeting, and he didn't say it, but looking back, he must have been into yoga. And he had us do muscle testing. And one of the things that he did was he had us hold a handful of vitamins. And when we held the handful of vitamins, he couldn't push our arm down. And then he let us hold a cigarette. And when we held the cigarette, he just pushed our arm right down.
Yeah.
So anyway, just back to where you were there.
Well, okay. So Hawkins' work came out in that same year. And it's like the three of them, and there are, like I said, no doubt many others, but those three, for me, were very close. It's also when Tom Kenyon started doing his own major shift in sound energy work and working with the interdimensional beings called Hathors. Okay, that happened around that same time. So there has been since then just this huge evolution of awareness of we are much more than the conventional stuff. The history is much different than the conventional stuff. The universe itself is much more than the conventional stuff. Okay, I mean, it's just utterly amazing. So we're in a unique historical period of awakening. Okay.
One thing I'd like to throw out there, Bill, just to clarify with everybody, because I didn't know about all this until I started researching this book of science of mind, body, and consciousness. But one of the things that you start to realize, and if you know about Graham Hancock, you probably know what I'm talking about.
Oh, absolutely.
But scientists who went into consciousness research, they put their careers on the line.
That's right.
And their possibility of future funding. And so this science that we hold, which we have a ton of it at globaltransformationproject.org to get this resolution, realize that there was a lot of blood, sweat, and tears that these scientists went through to collect all this science. And they didn't do it so that it could just sit in a book somewhere. They did it so that people like us could take it and we could use it to transform this planet. And we have to honor what those scientists did because it was huge. You know, it was a personal sacrifice on a level that you can't even imagine unless you know. And I write about it in the book, so you can read some of it, but you can research it on your own. No, these scientists put everything on the line so that we would have this science. And some of it is, you know, like what you're talking about right now.
Well, somebody has to, you know, break open the ice jam. They've got or the log jam. You know, somebody's got to speak truth to power.
Yep.
And basically just expose the limitations of virtually everything in our conventional paradigms.
Yep.
We are so much more than, and capable of so much more than, and inherently so much more than all that stuff.
One of the things that extraordinary consciousness experience I had in my 20s after I, you know, well, I started learning mind body, but then I had a catastrophic life experience. I lost my mother, father, and youngest son within about a year and a half. And I just went into tailspin, but then I decided, you know, I wasn't going to go out that way. And I started throwing myself into mind body, and I had an extraordinary consciousness experience. And I didn't have a visual experience, but I felt like it was the same thing, the same entity or consciousness or intelligence that had come to me when I was 6 in the form of an angel. And anyway, I just didn't see any point in going on. I had lost too much. I didn't understand how the world worked anymore. I'd lost faith and lost hope. And then I went in, and then I threw myself into meditation. And one night I had an experience, and the first thing that it did was it said, I am about to show you what life could be like. And it touched me right in the center of the heart and the center of the brain. And man, I had this expansive experience where I just felt I was connected to everybody, everywhere, all over the planet, and just saw this incredible compassion and beauty and the commonality of all of us. And it was just beyond description how beautiful it was. And then what happened was I started getting scared. I thought, am I dying? Is this what it's like to die? And the instant that I got scared, man, everything just slammed in reverse, and I just went slammed back into my body, and I was like gasping for breath. And then that voice, you know, and again, it wasn't a verbal voice, but it was right in the center of your brain voice, and it said, "Fear closes all doors. Fear closes all doors. Fear closes all doors." It said it 3 times, and that was the end of that particular episode. And that's always stuck with me, because all this stuff that we're talking about, this is all revolutionary stuff. Empowering people, becoming, you know, the realizing how big and huge and large we are, and imparting that to children all over the planet. I mean, it shouldn't be revolutionary. It's very natural, beautiful stuff, but it is.
We have a question from Brian.
Yeah. Thank you all for your talk today on everything.
Hey, Brian.
How you doing, Bill?
Good.
In order for the global transformation project to succeed, are we going to have to convince school boards across the country and the world that this idea is not a woke idea, because there's a lot of pressure on them to be anti-woke right now, if you noticed in the news?
Yeah, that's a great question. And to put it succinctly, the way that we're approaching this is science. Science shows that if human beings go into alpha state, about 8 hertz consciousness for 20-30 minutes a day, I think 30 minutes is what Harvard says, then what happens is you start having all these incredible educational benefits, health benefits, and social benefits that will save trillions of dollars in future health and social costs. So it's a real simple formula. There's nothing woo-woo or woke or anything about it. It's just science. And we can measure, if we're teaching kids how to go into alpha state consciousness, it's just a scientific reality. It improves our health. And it's all measured. That's the way that we approach it. We just keep it real simple. It's science-based. If anybody challenges it, then they just don't care about science. That's how we approach it.
Brian, I'd like to respond. Thank you. I think that's a superb question. And the answer from the Bill Spadey perspective is almost all of the work, that educational transformation work I've done in the past, I'm going to call it 2 decades, has been outside the US.
Oh, that's another
Because
point.
people outside the US do not have the levels and degrees of rigid polarization of religious perspectives and religious cultural perspectives that spin off then into this political dichotomy that we find ourselves in, the political polarization. Okay. Most of my work has been in other countries.
Yeah.
Where
same thing.
people
Same
are
thing.
just more open, more receptive,
Same.
and they don't have the agendas to protect.
Yeah, and that's the same thing with World Tai Chi Day too. You know, it's like it took off massively in other countries, and then also government bodies. But I will say, you know, we got 25 U.S. governors to, you know, proclaim the day and to advocate Tai Chi and Qigong for their citizens. So we don't want to be hobbled by the restrictions of the past, because what's different today is we have science that no generation in the history of planet Earth has had. And what we've done is we've put it all together, and you can see the relevant science at globaltransformationproject.org. But we're approaching it in the most effective way that we can. And that is, it's a reality, it's a scientific reality. If you teach people how to go into 5 hertz or 8 hertz alpha brainwave state, you're going to get all these benefits that would transform education. Just keep it real simple. It's going to save society trillions of dollars. That's all science-based. Harvard and Kaiser Permanente did, you know, massive research that showed that the overwhelming majority of illnesses are caused by unmanaged stress, best treated by mind-body practices, Tai Chi, Qigong, yoga, meditation, and mindfulness. Now, repetitive prayer also can give you alpha state production, but we didn't include that purposely because we don't want to have any religious connection, because we want to be able to get this in public education. And so if the mind, there's hundreds of millions of people all over the planet who've benefited from mind-body practice. So we should be able to get millions of signatures for the petition. What me and Angie have agreed to do is we've agreed to contact every United Nations mission on the planet. So we're not depending on the US to make, the US is less and less the center of the universe in the world. You know, I used to travel, and it used to be everybody was so curious to find out what the American thought. Trust me, nobody gives a crap what the American thinks anymore. You know, those days are over. And so there's a whole new world out there that we've got to play a part in, and that can be helpful. This UN resolution, the co-sponsoring nations we're going to get for it, they very well might not be the United States, and I could care less. I just want to get that UN proclamation, because then all the American teachers who know the value of mind body, and they're out there. There's tons of them out there. They know, you know, that this stuff works. They've experienced it in their life. And if they had a UN resolution, you know, and then the parents had a UN resolution, had all the science, you know, what we do is we create the engine of change. Because if I sit there and think, okay, does that mean that I have to change every school in America? Then I'd just crawl up in a fetal position and just lay in bed all day. You know what I'm saying? It's like we have to take this consciousness that we get from mind body, and we have to realize the value of it, find our esteem, and say, hey folks, it is nuts that we're not teaching this stuff to kids.
Yeah, I think.
Brian, thank you for your question. Do you have another one?
No, I like the simple, practical explanation. It's more believable. You don't want to get into too much new age speak. So
Oh, trust me, this dialogue is not what we're going to have with the United Nations. But I don't believe in censorship, and I believe people are having extraordinary consciousness experiences all over the planet. I mean, that's what the science shows. We're going to have Dr. Penberthy on to talk about that from the University of Virginia. And so I started talking about my extraordinary consciousness experiences because I think it's time for us to come out of the closet and just be honest with who we are and the experiences we had. And then that liberates other people to realize that they're not strange, you know, and then we can have a more, you know, healthful society to live in. And so I'm always open to having these conversations. But when we go to the UN and when we go to, you know, if we go to different universities or whatever for support, it's going to be real succinct. It's going to be real science-based. Teach kids how to go into 8 hertz consciousness. And then it's going to improve the educational system massively. It's going to save society trillions of dollars. Boom. Drop the mic.
Bill, I'd like to invite everybody to sign the petition. I posted it twice now in the chat. And Bill Spadey, I sent you a message in chat if you would let me know if you would want me to do that. Does anyone else have a question for either Bill?
And while we're waiting, everybody, it's not just signing the petition, it's spreading the petition. And so I know with crystal clarity that the global mind-body community can make this happen, and it can be a huge boon towards the future of the planet. The other thing I know with crystal clarity is me and Angie can't do this alone. We've dedicated ourselves to doing all the hard work of contacting all the missions, lobbying the missions, calling the missions, emailing the missions, sending letters to the missions. We're going to do all that. We promise to do all that. We're not asking for anything from anybody, but this idea has to catch fire. The mind-body community, the global mind-body community has to get excited about this because it's a real possibility. And we can do it. They passed the International Day of Yoga. So this can be done, but not if there's not a fire in the global mind-body community. We can have millions of signatures when we go to the UN. We're not going to do this unless we get at least 100,000 signatures.
I put in there to ask others to join us. So
yeah, this has to become a
that's
campaign.
good.
This has to be a fire in our hearts and in our consciousness. This can't just be, oh yeah, oh that looks cool. Okay, moving on. You know what I'm saying?
I do have a question though. I will support this and with all of my resources here.
Jerry, can you put your video on? And is it Jerry Dyer?
Yeah, my camera's not working at the moment.
Okay,
that's
so
my
this
problem.
is Jerry Dyer speaking. Go
Hi,
ahead.
Jerry.
Yeah, I just wanted to question one thing. When you put up that symbol in your slide, which was I guess your final slide, which we are not going to have access to the slide briefing. I don't know.
Oh, the triangle with the infinity symbol and the circle.
Yeah, and I don't know what you want to
beautiful.
call it. I just want you to know that my higher consciousness had instant recognition of that before you said
Wonderful.
anything about it. When it was put up on the screen, I just understood it. I just recognized it. I connected to it. So however you got it to be brought to you, and you talked about the construction of it, I'm just telling you that. And my whole previous history was, like I said, science-based, evidence-based. And then it's only probably in the last 5 years that I've explored all these alternative modalities and studied Tai Chi and medical Qigong and yoga. So I've had to unlearn everything that I was taught growing up, like everybody else here has had to do. It's unfortunate that we have to get into later life before we start to recognize all the things that the doctors talked about. But
that's what we're trying to change.
Yeah, and that's what you're trying to change. And as I said, from my earlier experience, we know that if you don't get it reach them, well, even it sounds like now, based on what you said about the first 7 years, that even kindergarten is too late. But
Well, second grade, up until second
yeah,
grade.
but I mean, just think about what our own grounding was when we were, from the time we were born until we went to school. Then when school took over, that's fine, but yeah, this is just, it is a mission to try to teach people that they're so much more than anything that anybody's ever taught them, and we're not finite in many ways. So
it's so exciting when you start to discover that.
yeah, it is.
Well,
But
Jerry-
it's unfortunate that we have to do it later in life. So we want to look at how do we communicate that. I can remember back when I was a Girl Scout leader saying to the girls when they would get tense, let's just learn to take 3 deep yoga breaths.
Yeah.
And that became our mantra for my troop. So,
And that, what, I would be willing to bet, not necessarily all those Girl Scouts, but some of those Girl Scouts that were in that class, that changed their life.
well, I
can
know
count
one
on
for in particular ended up becoming a yoga instructor. So I guess so. I mean,
There
maybe
you
that
go.
opened up.
No, but I mean, I bet I bet a lot of them, or several of them are using it, to some extent, or it led them to yoga classes or whatever, you know what I
Well, they
mean?
used to say to each other too, if they watched each other when it became our mantra. So it was like if somebody was upset, the other one would say, come on, just take 3 deep yoga breaths, and you'll be fine and whatever. Before tests, they got in the habit before they would take an exam in school, they would do that little exercise with themselves and stuff like that.
Well,
So-
Dr. Rhodes did research, and she taught, she had students doing studying for a test, doing physical exercise, like impact exercise, and then students doing Qigong meditation. And in every time she did it, the Qigong meditation group scored higher on the test.
Thank you, Bill, for bringing that up. And thank you, Jerry. We have Maureen who has a question.
Yes, I was just wondering if you're in contact with the Wednesday group that does the Zoom from all around the world. Redmond and Whistle does it from London. Do you see that?
No, I haven't contacted them, but if you can contact them and direct them to globaltransformationproject.org, that would, and encourage
I'll do
them.
that.
That'd be
Because
awesome. Yeah,
there's a
because
lot
that's
of
what we're
people-
trying to do. We're trying to get out everywhere.
Yeah, right
Maureen?
now for, yeah,
Could you put that in chat, please? Could you
okay.
put that in chat? Thank you.
Jerry, I'm sorry, not.
I was just gonna say, it started during the pandemic that somebody had the idea to do, we watched the first third of Professor Chang's form, his, the short form, and then we do it together and somebody discusses a little bit about Tai Chi, but it has stayed all these years. It's really interesting. There's a lot of very experienced people that come on and they share so willingly all their information. It's a good thing. So
that'd be another good networking source. We just want to get mind body people all over the planet behind the resolution, because it doesn't take any work. It's just a matter of just spreading the word. You know what I mean? Just different organizations telling their members, hey, you guys want to help get a UN resolution to get mind body into education. So it's not a heavy lift. It's just that it's like, people have to have an urgency to spread it out.
mhm.
Shobad, my contact information is down there in one of those slides, I think maybe toward the end.
Yes, let me get that. And it's been wonderful. This is such a provocative discussion. Hold on. I'm in the wrong place. Okay. Do you know about what slide?
Yeah, keep there we go. The one there, that one.
Right.
My website is being pretty fundamentally redone right now. But a lot of this, a lot of the new work is going to be on it. I sent in ahead of time chapters 11 and 12 of my outcome-based education book. And I would like, this is not a commercial announcement, but I really want to encourage those of you who are interested in education. The book's available in e-form quite inexpensively on Amazon.com. Get it. There are just some amazingly provocative things in chapters 9, 10, 11, and 12.
And repeat the title of it again, William.
Yes, it's the one that we had. It's called Outcome Based. Nope, not.
Hold
nope,
on.
There we go.
No,
Oh, no,
that's
wait a
the opening to greater realities. Keep going up,
Going up.
Yeah,
up, up, up.
there
There
it
we
is.
go. Top one. That one. There we go.
There we go. Thank you.
Outcome-based education's empowering essence.
Yeah,
Is it safe to assume you can get all your books on Amazon?
One of them, the opening to greater realities book, it turns out there's a glitch right now and people haven't been able to get it, but they are all available that way. If not, please contact me directly. My email was there in that slide. And Shobin, I would say if people want, I would recommend sending them the essay, What is the Fifth Paradigm?
Okay, so before CJ had to leave, she put all of the works that you sent us, all three, in a PDF. Do you want me to share all of them or just the fifth paragraph?
No, that you could, if she did that, you could send all three.
What I'm going to do then is it's a link. I'm going to put it in the chat in just a minute. So I want to thank you for sharing that. And also Jerry Gurman, who is on here, just sent me a message that she sent the petition to her Qigong buddies. So
Oh,
thank you.
good.
Thank you for doing that and sharing
Yeah.
that.
Yeah, thank you so much. Beautiful. Yeah, and I just at the bottom of every social media or email that I do, I just have a thing at the bottom that says, "Have you signed the petition?" ? www.globaltransformationproject.org.
Wonderful. I'm just trying to pull that up. Having a little technical difficulty, but I'll put it up. Are there any final comments that you'd like to make?
Well, yeah, I just I want to thank you so much for being here, Dr. Spadey. And yeah, it's just been a really beautiful conversation on so many levels. And it's good to know, that there are visionaries like yourself that are envisioning the next level for education, because I've known for a long time, just from my own experience, and then learning mind body and then seeing how much more curious and eager for information I was, after I, got out of the educational system, that that it was time for a new educational system, and to know that there are educators like yourself that are formulating this new possibility for the future of education. I just find it really encouraging and exciting. And yeah, thank you so much for sharing your work and this vision that you have.
Well, you're more than welcome. I would like people to know about one of the other books that's up there. And that's the one, Bringing Heart and Soul to Education. It's filled with essays by educators and others. There are researchers who've laid out basically the research at that time that was available on consciousness and consciousness development in people. Yeah. So that book also is available. And there are a couple of chapters in there from people who had models of schooling, et cetera, that have been, to me, just so impressive in terms of how they can bring about change and bring about unified, sort of a community approach to education.
Beautiful.
There's a chapter in it that I wrote on a model that we developed 20 some years ago called Heartlight, that literally was inspired by and done in collaboration with Neil Donald Walsh, who wrote the Conversations with God books. And he and I had quite a partnership going for a while. So there's a lot in that book, and yeah, there it is.
Well,
This is
thank
great.
you so much. This has been so provocative. Bill Douglas, do you have any parting words?
No, I just wanted to thank everybody for attending and for spreading the word on the Global Transformation Project. And Dr. Spadey, I wanted to thank you for becoming one of the official expert supporters at globaltransformationproject.org. It really means a lot to this project. And so thank you so much for, putting your face and your bio where your heart is on this. And I encourage everybody to go to globaltransformationproject.org and click on the scientists and educators and health experts that are supporting. These are leading minds in the world that see the absolute common sense of what we're trying to do here.
Very hopeful. Thank you.
Thank you for this opportunity. I deeply, deeply appreciate it. And thank you, those of you who watched. And Bill and Shioban, thank you. I mean, this has been terrific. Thank you.
We are so appreciative, Dr. Spadey, of your time. I put a lot of things in the chat. People can print out the chat to look at the different websites and links that I put on there. So you
Be sure to print out the chat. You'll regret it when you don't, because it goes away. It goes away when we turn this off.
wise words from Bill Douglas. We will be posting this on YouTube. Bill is with family right now, so he needs a couple of days to work on it, and then it will be put on YouTube. Bill Spadey, do you have anything else that you'd like to share? Any last parting words of wisdom?
Well, only that I have a number of colleagues who would love to see. Bill had mentioned he's going to edit this and put it up.
Yes.
They would like to get the recording.
Oh, it'll be on YouTube.
Yeah, we'll
let
release
you know.
it. It'll be on the globaltransformationproject.org page, but it'll be on YouTube. So we'll have it embedded on the globaltransformationproject.org page.
So Bill is saying it'll be both on the website and on YouTube. And if you have any difficulty accessing it, just contact us and we'll
alert everybody. So that'll include all the petition signers. So if you sign the petition, you'll get an alert when we after we edit it and put it up.
Well, thank you all. This has been a wonderful opportunity.
Unbelievable.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you.
Okay, well, have a happy 4th, everybody, and thank you for joining us. And remember, again, in September, we have another exciting, provocative speaker, and we hope you'll join us. So thank you.
You don't want to miss that one. You don't want to miss that one. That one's going to be as interesting as this one. And I hope you'll be there, William, because we'll be talking about extraordinary consciousness experiences and the behavioral science proving that we're not weird. We're actually normal.
How weird are you? Okay.
I'm so weird, I'm normal.
Thank you all.
Okay, God bless.
Thank you. Have a good evening, everyone. Bye-bye.
Bye.
Bye-bye.
Thank you so much. Good to see you, Bill. I haven't seen you since the conference in Nashville.
Oh yeah.
That's
Oh
where I
my.
met
That was
you.
a beautiful conference.
Yeah. Oh my God. Say hello to Angela. I don't know if you remember me at all, but
Yeah. I'll tell her. Yeah.
okay.
All right. Take care,
Thanks
Jerry.
for this.
Yeah,
Bye.
thank you.
Bye-bye now.
Bye, Siobhan.
Bye, Siobhan.
Poles apart and the color of time. You're the color of being born. Unless we breathe in each other, there is no garden.
is here. So today is June 16th, and the Tai Chi Without Borders project is here to talk with Angela and Bill Douglas, the founders of World Tai Chi and Qigong Day. We have already talked last year, focusing on the World Tai Chi Day project, and we'll talk a bit about the World Tai Chi Day too, but also we would like to focus on this project in which Bill and Angela are integrating and fostering, and which is the Global Transformation Project.
Global transformation project of yours. Né? What do you consider the best accomplishment to get this, after you explain what it is?
Mhm.
And what is the major weakness or barrier you think about this project? And the third question, what are the strengths of this project?
What happened was we spent about 40 years creating, we didn't know what we were creating at the time. We just started collecting all the we were trying to scientifically understand what we were going through in our lives when we started practicing Tai Chi and Qigong and yoga and meditation. Because, you know, you start having a lot of experiences, and at that time, nobody really understood it other than from an Eastern kind of esoteric way. It wasn't a science way, but over these 40 years, there's been a ton of science. And so we're the first generation in human history to have all this science behind mind body, and it's massive. And so as we were collecting all this science, and then the science that showed that it could make people's IQs higher, that it could increase their verbal fluency, their math proficiency skills, their focus and their immunity, reduce stress, anxiety, depression, you know, insomnia, all these things that, you know, school students are dealing with, you know, major issues and benefits that would profoundly change the educational system. So what that, when we were finishing it, we decided to put in there a vision of the Global Transformation Project. And that's exactly how World Tai Chi Day started, because we were writing the Complete Idiot's Guide to Tai Chi and Qigong, and we put a chapter in there called World Tai Chi Day. And that was before it was really World Tai Chi Day. It was a vision that we had, and so we put it in the book. And so we did the same thing with the new second edition of the Gospel of Science. We put a chapter in there called Global Transformation Project, because it just became so obvious that this, if we had this in public schools, it would solve so many problems on so many levels in society, save trillions of dollars year after year. Big challenge that we're having right now at this stage, because it's going to go through stages, but at this stage, the biggest problem isn't the structure out there in the world. The biggest challenge is getting the mind-body community to find their esteem and start admitting that these things are life transformative things, because we've all experienced it. That's why we still do this stuff. We have all transformed our lives with this stuff. And there's a mountain of science that shows that this could be happening with children all over the planet. And so as a global mind-body community, we have to let go here and admit the obvious, which is that it's crazy that we don't have mind-body education in public schools. And then once the mind-body community catches the fire of this reality, and then starts spreading this, we could have millions of signatures to go to the United Nations mission, and we could change the future of humanity. The benefits of this would be passed down to future generations for the rest of humanity.
That's right. Beautiful. Yes. We have,
and then when you get it, and then Marcus, when you were mentioning earlier, I'll give it over to you in a second, but you were mentioning earlier the global implications of this. When you look at that science, and that is a whole other, you know, mega level excitement when you start to look at that science.
Because we're talking about neuroscience lab at my university, the Federal University of Rio de Janeiro, is considering the project in which we can measure brainwave patterns before doing a Tai Chi session, for example, a Qigong session. This can be demonstrated scientifically. We that practice Tai Chi Qigong for so many decades, we know about that when you feel, but it's good to have this proven, and we're gonna do some work showing this.
We're the first generation that has had all this science,
it's possible to,
you know. And sometimes, you know, it's like when I talk about the new second edition of the Gospel of Science with, you know, some of the mind-body people that I've been working with for decades, I'll tell them about it, and tell them how excited I am about the Global Transformation Project. And they act like they already know all this science, but they don't, because I was right in the middle of all this science. And until I started digging and finding out what it was out there, and the implications of this are massive, because you were talking about the brain waves. And one of the things that they found is that when people meditate, when people go into alpha state on a regular basis, they start to also have more, when they're in their normal waking lives, they also have to have more gamma wave consciousness. And the gamma wave consciousness, I call it quantum consciousness.
I know about that.
Yeah, because you're letting go of the linear consciousness, and then you're experiencing things from multi dimensions
that you transform, and also this reverberate outside in the society, as some Princeton studies have showed, right? So relation about when you have more people in the mind, body education increasing, then you see criminal rates falling down, right? So because waves, they go outside of us. And of course, the physical phenomena. So we have such a powerful tool in our hands. And as you say, the mind-body people should really be conscious, aware of this power and how necessary it is nowadays. Sometimes I feel with this urgency sense that if we don't do this, about the midnight clock.
That feeling that they get, and they would want to stick with it, And so as they grow up, they get more and more into the mind body.
And I know some mind body teachers, when we were building World Tai Chi Day, we have our pulse on Tai Chi and Qigong and mind body teachers around the planet, because that's what we do. We're Tai Chi teachers. We don't make money off of these global things that we do. We do them because we want humanity to, reach its full potential. But no, we're just Tai Chi teachers, just like everybody else. And so I know when we bring this up, I know there's mind body teachers around the planet that are thinking, wait a minute, what are they trying to do? Put my yoga studio out of business? Put my time? No, like Angie said, when these kids graduate from high school, they're going to be looking for mind body classes. All the teachers are going to get way more students. And also a lot of those teachers around the planet are going to get employed by the public education system. That's what we're advocating, because, that was another thing I want to mention that you kind of touched on, is that one of the things that World Tai Chi and Qigong Day has shown us is that mind-body teachers are in every city and every country on the planet. Me and Angie, we had no idea about that. We just thought people like in California and China were doing it. We didn't realize the whole planet was doing it. And so that was another thing that brought us to the Global Transformation Project, because we know that mind-body teachers exist in every culture, speaking every language, and they're in cities all over the planet. It's all been put into place. The science has come together. Mind-body has spread all the way around the planet. And then the UN just passed the International Day of Yoga. So here we are at this epic moment in history where we could actually expand this into public education around the planet.
Sounds like you've got these down built to a science.
Yes, it has become that. I never thought that it was going to lead me down a scientific path, but when that first hospital class that I did just kind of started that ball rolling.
That is amazing, but simple techniques can just change your life. But you've said that just a few brain-changing techniques could cause a change of the world, basically. Mm-hmm. That's dropping violence. How could that happen?
Well, when I did that Folsom Prison presentation, and so what the meditation appears to do is to just help us relax out of the way of our most natural selves and our most natural state. And I think that ultimately, what's going to happen ultimately is these mind-body practices, these meditative practices, they're going to be taught in schools all over the planet, and that's what we're pushing.
Why aren't they doing it now, Bill?
But your guest is too optimistic on the big picture, because this crap ain't going to get straightened out. And,
Well-
and the only thing I disagree with him on, you know, like I said, I'm 73, so I went through Vietnam,
Got 8
seen
years
all
on
the
me.
riots and the whole 9 yards. But when I was growing up, I never seen them going into schools and killing little kids in these mass shootings. So I don't, I never heard of that at all.
Yeah.
So that's a sign that you just live in a sick society.
Well, okay. Now, one thing to keep in mind is you'll never turn on the news and have the news tell you that 6,999,999,000 people were really nice to each other today and opened the door for each other and said please and thank you. But that's what happens all over the planet every day. But they're not going to put it on the news. They're not going to put it on the news because that's not what kicks in the stress chemicals that gets people to keep watching the news and thinking that's the only place they're going to get the truth.
You're correct on all that.
But
it's not just the video games, Calvin. It's the desensitization from violence is in many aspects of our society.
Well, yeah, but what I'm talking about is changing the program so that these things won't have that impact on people, because everything starts in human consciousness. And what we know is that if we were teaching school kids how to go into that alpha theta brainwave state, for an hour a day every day for 12 years, it actually shrinks the stress and fear part of their brain, and it increases the empathy and compassion parts of their brain. And so you're talking about a kid that has a completely different wired brain by the time he gets old enough to go buy a semi-automatic weapon. And that's where everything changes. I mean, if you want to get down to the root, it's consciousness. And we have these scientifically proven technologies that we could be exposing all the school children to that would not only make them smarter and better readers, better at math, more verbally eloquent, all these things. It's all scientifically proven. And then it would also be boosting their immune system, and after the pandemic that we went through, my God, wouldn't it be great to be boosting every kid's T-cell count? There was a Tai Chi study at UCLA, and they were checking people's T-cell counts. And so they had a control group and a Tai Chi group. And at the end of the study, I think it was 12 weeks, the Tai Chi group had 50% more T-cells. And what the science shows coming out of COVID was that the healthcare workers that had higher T-cell counts were much less likely to get COVID, and also they suffered much less from it if they got it, if their T-cell count was higher. So we know how to actually boost kids' T-cells by count by 50%. So it's just insane that we're not doing this in schools, because it could avert a lot of these violence problems in schools, because the schools that do it have already seen that. The schools that have mind body, they've already seen a reduction in violence. Prisons that have done it have already seen a reduction in violence. So this is all scientifically proven, and this wouldn't be hard to do. It'd be easy to start teaching kids how to do this stuff for 1 hour a day.
Of the world we're kind of heading towards. If you want to feel like things are utopian and
no, wait, hold on.
For you, pal. You have a good one.
Yeah, you too. I'm not saying we live in a utopian world. There is crime. There always will be. For humanity, there's always going to be somebody that's going to...
Bill, I'm going to have to apologize. I'm usually kind of negative and cynical on the program. You're bringing a level of optimism and a fresh breath of air. You're saying there are solutions. These people don't want to hear about solutions at 1 o'clock in the morning.
Good job.